The wagon wheels kicked up dust devils as it lurched to a stop in front of the weathered ranch house. And Amelia Walsh knew her fate had just been sealed by men who saw her as nothing more than currency. She sat rigid in the back of the wagon, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white beneath the grime of 3 days' travel. The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly on the arid landscape surrounding Piotch, a silver mining town that had earned its reputation as one of the roughest settlements in the West. It was 1874, and Amelia had learned long ago that women had little say in the trajectories of their own lives. But this particular indignity cut deeper than most. Her stepfather, a gambling man with more debts than sense, had lost heavily to a rancher in a poker game 2 weeks prior. The debt had included a prized stallion that the rancher claimed was worth $300. When her stepfather couldn't pay, he'd offered Amelia instead. 20 years old, educated enough to read and write, and according to the crude assessment of the men who'd brokered the deal, pretty enough to make up the difference. The ranch house door opened, and a man stepped out onto the porch. Amelia's breath caught despite herself. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his dusty work shirt. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and even from this distance, she could see the sharp angles of his face, weathered by sun and wind. He couldn't have been more than 26 or 27, she guessed. His expression was unreadable as he approached the wagon. Dalton Crawford, one of the men who'd driven her here, called out. He was a weasel-faced man named Pike who'd leered at her the entire journey. "That's right," the cowboy said, his voice a low drawl that somehow carried authority despite its quietness. "Brought you what you're owed," Pike announced, gesturing to Amelia as if she were a piece of livestock. Walsh couldn't come up with the money or the horse, so he sent his daughter to settle the debt. "Pretty little thing, ain't she? Should more than make up for that stallion you lost." Dalton's eyes moved to Amelia for the first time, and she forced herself to meet his gaze. She wouldn't cower, wouldn't give these men the satisfaction of seeing her fear. His eyes were a startling shade of blue-gray, like a stormy sky, and something flickered in them that she couldn't quite identify. Not the lust she'd expected, nor the satisfaction of a man receiving payment. Something else entirely. "Step down," he said, and though the words were directed at her, they weren't unkind. Amelia rose on shaking legs and climbed down from the wagon, her simple calico dress dusty and wrinkled from the journey. She'd been allowed to bring only one small carpetbag with her possessions. Everything else had been left behind in her stepfather's ramshackle house on the outskirts of town. Dalton circled her slowly, and Amelia's jaw tightened. She felt like a horse being evaluated at auction. When he completed his inspection, he turned back to Pike and the other man. "This is what Joseph Walsh sent. His stepdaughter as payment for a stolen horse." "Stolen's a strong word," Pike said, shifting uncomfortably. "He borrowed it, couldn't return it on account of it breaking a leg. He put it down, so now he owes you the value. The girl's young, healthy, can cook and clean. She's worth at least as much as any horse." Dalton was silent for a long moment, and Amelia could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. The sun seemed to press down on her like a physical weight, and sweat trickled down her spine beneath her dress. Around them, the landscape stretched out in endless variations of brown and gray, punctuated by scrub brush and the occasional twisted juniper tree. In the distance, the mountains rose up like jagged teeth against the brilliant blue sky. "Wait here," Dalton finally said. He strode toward the barn, a sturdy structure that looked better maintained than most of the buildings she'd seen in Piotch proper. Amelia watched him go, confusion mixing with her fear. What was he doing, Pike and his companion exchanged glances. "Probably going to get some rope to tie her up," Pike said with an unpleasant laugh. "Some of these ranchers like to keep their property secured." The words made Amelia's stomach turn, but before she could form a response, Dalton emerged from the barn leading a horse. It was a beautiful creature, a chestnut mare with a white blaze down her face and intelligent dark eyes. The horse's coat gleamed with health, and she moved with a dancer's grace as Dalton led her over. He stopped in front of Amelia and held out the lead rope. "She's yours." Amelia stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "I don't understand." "The mare, she's yours." Dalton's expression was serious, his eyes fixed on hers. "Your stepfather sent you as payment for a horse, so I'm giving you a horse. We're even." "Now wait just a minute," Pike sputtered, stepping forward. "That ain't how this works. Walsh owes you $300 worth of value. You can't just give the girl a horse and call it square." Dalton turned to face Pike, and though he didn't raise his voice, there was steel in it. "I can do whatever I want with my property and my debts. The way I see it, Joseph Walsh sent me payment and I'm accepting it on my terms. Miss Walsh here arrived at my ranch, and in exchange I'm giving her a horse. The debt is settled. You can ride back to town and tell Walsh he doesn't owe me anything more." "This is ridiculous," Pike's companion said. "You're just going to let her go." "I don't see why that's any concern of yours," Dalton said mildly. "You delivered her here. Your job is done. I suggest you head back to town before it gets any later." Pike opened his mouth as if to argue further, but something in Dalton's stance made him reconsider. He spat in the dust, shot Amelia one last resentful look, and climbed back onto the wagon. "Your funeral, Crawford. Girl's probably more trouble than she's worth anyway." The wagon rolled away, leaving Amelia standing in the yard holding the lead rope of a horse she'd never expected to own, staring at a man she couldn't begin to understand. "I don't know what to say," she finally managed. "You don't have to say anything." Dalton gestured toward the horse. "Her name's Juniper. She's got a good temperament, smart, and she'll run all day if you need her to. There's a saddle in the barn that'll fit her." Amelia looked at the mare, then back at Dalton. "You're really just giving her to me, just like that, just like that." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "What your stepfather did was wrong. What those men were planning to do, leaving you here like this, was wrong. I won't be part of it. You've got a horse now, which means you've got choices. You can ride back to town, head somewhere else, whatever you want to do." The enormity of what he was offering hit her all at once. Freedom, agency, the ability to choose her own path. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry, wouldn't show weakness. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, the words scraping out of her throat. "My mother died when I was 15. My stepfather married her when I was 10, and after she passed, he made it clear I was only useful as long as I could work or be traded. I have no other family, no money beyond the few coins in my bag. I can ride, and I can shoot a little, but not well enough to make it on my own out here." Dalton was quiet for a moment, studying her. Up close, she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck where it brushed his collar. "Then stay," he said simply. Stay here. I could use help around the ranch. I run cattle, breed horses, do some work for the mines when they need pack animals. It's just me and my foreman, Charlie, who lives in the bunkhouse. The ranch house has 2 bedrooms. You could have one, and I'd keep the other. I'd pay you fair wages for fair work, and you'd be free to leave whenever you wanted." Amelia searched his face for any sign of deception, any hint of ulterior motives, but found none. "Why would you do this? You don't know me." "I know enough," Dalton said. "I know you've been dealt a bad hand through no fault of your own. I know you held your head up even when those men were treating you like property. And
This
I know
story
that
was
no
posted on
one
the channel
deserves
The
to be
Rusty
traded
Saddle.
like a
Please do
gambling
not
chip."
repost it in any
His
form.
voice roughened slightly. "My sister Clara was 20 when she died, about your age. Cholera took her 3 years ago. She was traveling west with our parents and I was already out here, trying to make something of this ranch. By the time I got word and made it back east, she was gone. I think about what might have happened if circumstances had been different, if she'd needed help and there was no one to give it." He met Amelia's eyes. "I can't help my sister anymore, but I can help you." The sincerity in his voice, the raw grief still evident when he spoke of his sister, convinced Amelia more than any pretty words could have. This man was genuine. This offer was real. "I can cook," she said, "and clean, mend clothes, tend a garden if you've got one. I'm not afraid of hard work." "I've got a garden that's mostly weeds right now," Dalton admitted with the ghost of a smile. "And I've been living on beans and bacon for longer than I care to admit. If you can do better than that, I'll count myself fortunate." "Then I'll stay," Amelia said, and felt something shift in her chest as she spoke the words. "At least for now, if you're sure about the offer." "I'm sure." Dalton reached out and stroked Juniper's neck, and the mare leaned into his touch. "Let me show you to the house and you can get settled. We'll put Juniper in the paddock with the other horses." He took the lead rope from her and started toward the barn, and Amelia followed, her carpetbag clutched in one hand. The barn was dim and cool after the brightness of the yard, and it smelled of hay and horse and leather. There were 6 stalls, 3 on each side, and all but one were occupied. Dalton led Juniper to the empty stall, removed her halter, and made sure she had water. "This will be her stall," he said. "She's particular about her space, doesn't like sharing. The gray gelding next to her is Smoke. He's my primary riding horse. The bay is Ranger, good for long distances. The others belong to Charlie or are horses I'm training for sale." They walked back out into the sunshine, and Dalton led her to the ranch house. It was a simple structure, wood framed with a covered porch that provided some relief from the sun. Inside, it was surprisingly neat for a bachelor's home. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace against one wall, a rough-hewn table with 4 chairs, and shelves holding tin plates and cups. 2 doors led off the main room. "That one's my room," Dalton said, indicating the door on the left. "This one's yours." He opened the other door to reveal a small but clean bedroom with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a single window that looked out toward the mountains. "It's not much, but the mattress is decent, and there are extra blankets in the chest." "It's more than I expected," Amelia said honestly. The room was sparse, but it was clean and private, and the bed looked infinitely more comfortable than the wagon she'd been sleeping in. "Privy's out back, and there's a pump in the yard for water. I usually heat water on the stove for washing up. Charlie comes by for breakfast most mornings, and we all eat together." Dalton paused in the doorway. "I should tell you I'm not always here. Sometimes I have to ride out to check on cattle or deliver horses, might be gone for a few days at a time. Charlie's a good man, been with me for 2 years. He'll treat you respectfully or answer to me." "I understand," Amelia said. She set her carpetbag on the bed and turned to face him. "Mr. Crawford, I want to thank you. What you did today, giving me a choice when I had none, I won't forget that." "Just Dalton is fine," he said. "And you don't need to thank me. Just pull your weight around here and we'll get along fine." He backed toward the door. "I've got to go check on some fencing in the north pasture. Make yourself at home, and if you want to start on that garden, the tools are in the shed next to the barn." He left, and Amelia sank down onto the bed, her legs suddenly weak. The events of the day crashed over her all at once. This morning, she'd woken in the wagon, certain she was being delivered to a life of servitude or worse. Now she sat in a clean room in a house where she'd been offered honest work for honest pay, with a horse of her own in the barn. And Dalton Crawford, the rancher who'd turned her entire world sideways with his unexpected kindness, was unlike any man she'd ever met. She allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to sit and process, before standing and unpacking her meager belongings. She had 2 other dresses, both as worn and faded as the one she wore, a nightgown, some undergarments, a hairbrush, and the small leather-bound book of poetry her mother had given her before she died. It was her most precious possession, and she placed it carefully in the top drawer of the chest. Then she went to explore her new home. The kitchen was functional but sparse. She found the stores of food, mostly dried beans, salt pork, flour, and coffee. There were a few withered potatoes in a basket and some sad-looking carrots. The garden, when she went to investigate, was indeed mostly weeds, but she could see where someone had once planted vegetables. With work, it could be productive again. She spent the rest of the afternoon pulling weeds and turning soil, losing herself in the physical labor. It felt good to work toward something positive, something that would yield results she could see and touch. The sun was lowering toward the mountains when she heard hoofbeats and looked up to see Dalton riding back, sitting easy in the saddle as if he'd been born there. He dismounted and walked over to the garden, surveying her work with an approving nod. "You've made good progress." "I found some bean seeds in the shed," Amelia said, pushing a strand of hair back from her face. "And what might be lettuce seeds, though the packet is so old I can't be sure. If you can spare some money, I could buy proper seeds in town and get a real garden going." "I'll take you into Piotch tomorrow," Dalton said. "You'll need other things too, I expect. Fabric for dresses, whatever else you need." "I can make my own dresses," Amelia said. "My mother taught me to sew. I just need the fabric and thread." "Then we'll get that too." He glanced toward the house. "I should warn you about Piotch. It's a rough town, one of the roughest in Nevada. There are good people there, but there are also men who think they can take what they want. When we go tomorrow, you stay close to me." "I will," Amelia promised. She'd heard stories about Piotch, about the murders and the lawlessness. They said more men had died from gunfights than had died from natural causes since the Silver Strike. "Come on," Dalton said. "I'll help you wash up, and then I'll make us some dinner. Tomorrow you can take over the cooking, but tonight I'll show you where everything is." Dinner was, as he'd warned, beans and bacon, with some hard biscuits that Dalton admitted had been made by Charlie's wife, who lived in town. "She takes pity on us sometimes and sends food," he explained. "Charlie goes into town every Sunday to see her." "Why does she live in town instead of here?" Amelia asked. "She's got family there and she works as a seamstress, has a good business built up. They're saving to buy their own place." Dalton poured coffee for both of them, strong and black. "Charlie's a good man, like I said. Loyal. He helped me build most of this place." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and then Dalton asked, "How long had your stepfather been planning this, trading you for his debt?" Amelia's hand tightened on her fork. "I don't know. He told me 2 days before those men came, said I was finally going to be useful for something." The bitterness in her voice was impossible to hide. "He's not a kind man, my stepfather. Never was. I think my mother married him because she was desperate. We had nothing after my father died, and Joseph seemed like he could provide for us. But he gambled, drank, spent money on foolish schemes. After Mama died, I stayed because I had nowhere else to go." "You've got somewhere now," Dalton said quietly. "Long as you want it." The simple statement, offered without fanfare or expectation, made Amelia's throat tight. "Why are you being so kind to me? Really?" Dalton was silent for a long moment, turning his coffee cup between his hands. "You asked me that before, and I told you about my sister. That's
This
true, that's
story was
part of it.
posted on
But
the
there's
channel The
more."
Rusty Saddle.
He looked
Please do
up,
not
meeting her
repost it in any
eyes.
form.
"My father used to tell me that a man's character isn't defined by what he does when people are watching, but by what he does when no one would know the difference. Those men who brought you here, they would have ridden away and never given you another thought. Your stepfather traded you like you were nothing. I couldn't be part of that, wouldn't be part of it, not and still look at myself in the mirror." "You're a good man, Dalton Crawford," Amelia said softly. "I try to be," he said. "Don't always succeed, but I try." That night, lying in her narrow bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling around her, Amelia felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope for something more, something better. And when she finally slept, her dreams were not of the dusty wagon and leering men, but of blue-gray eyes and a quiet voice that had offered her a choice when she'd had none. The next morning, Amelia woke to the sound of men's voices in the main room. She dressed quickly in her least worn dress and braided her dark hair, then ventured out to find Dalton and another man sitting at the table with cups of coffee. "Morning," Dalton said. "This is Charlie Monroe, my foreman. Charlie, this is Amelia Walsh. She's going to be helping out around the ranch." Charlie was a weathered man in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard and kind eyes. He stood and tipped his hat to her. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Walsh. Dalton told me about the situation. I'm sorry for what you went through, but you're in good hands here." "Thank you," Amelia said. "Can I make you both breakfast? Real breakfast, not just coffee." "Now that's the best offer I've heard all week," Charlie said with a grin. Amelia set to work, and within half an hour she'd produced eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits that put Charlie's store-bought ones to shame. Both men ate with the enthusiasm of people who'd been subsisting on their own cooking for far too long. "Miss Walsh, if you cook like this every day, I might propose marriage myself," Charlie said, then immediately looked horrified. "Begging your pardon, that was inappropriate." "It's all right," Amelia said, though she felt her cheeks warm. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." After breakfast, Dalton hitched up a wagon and they set out for Piotch. The town was about an hour's ride from the ranch, and as they traveled, Dalton pointed out various landmarks and told her about the land. "That's where the Meadow Valley Wash runs," he said, indicating a line of greenery in the distance. "Only reliable water source for miles. My ranch has access to it, which is one reason this land is valuable. Without water, you can't run cattle or horses in this country." Piotch was indeed as rough as advertised. The main street was lined with saloons, gambling halls, and supply stores. Men with guns on their hips walked the boardwalks, and the sound of piano music drifted from open doorways even at mid-morning. Dalton kept Amelia close as they visited the general store, where he bought her fabric, thread, needles, and seeds for the garden. He also insisted on buying her a proper hat to keep the sun off her face and a pair of sturdy boots to replace her worn shoes. "You'll need these for working around the ranch," he said when she protested the expense. "Consider it part of your wages." At the fabric counter, Amelia selected practical calico and cotton, but Dalton added a length of deep green muslin. "For Sundays," he said simply, and wouldn't hear her objections. They were loading the wagon when a man approached, tall and heavy-set with a marshal's badge pinned to his vest. "Dalton Crawford," he said. "Heard you had some visitors yesterday." "Word travels fast," Dalton said neutrally. "It does in a town this size." "I'm Marshal Hendricks, madam," he said to Amelia. "I heard your stepfather sent you out to Crawford's ranch as payment for a debt. That true?" Amelia lifted her chin. "It is, but Mr. Crawford gave me a horse and offered me employment." I'm working for him now of my own free will. The marshal studied her face, then looked at Dalton. That the way of it? That's the way of it, Dalton confirmed. Debt's settled, and Miss Walsh is a free woman working for fair wages. Good enough for me, the marshal said. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't any funny business. We've got enough problems in this town without adding to them. He tipped his hat to Amelia. Madam, if you ever need help, my office is right there on the main street. Don't hesitate. Thank you, Marshal, Amelia said. As they drove back to the ranch, Amelia asked, Does everyone in town know my business? Probably, Dalton admitted. Pike's got a big mouth and gossip spreads like wildfire, but let them talk. You've done nothing wrong and neither have I. In a few weeks, there'll be some new scandal and everyone will forget about us. But Amelia wasn't sure she wanted to be forgotten, at least not by the man sitting beside her. Over the past day, she'd found herself noticing things about Dalton Crawford. The way his hands were gentle with the horses, but strong when he worked. The quiet competence with which he moved through his days. The fact that he'd given her privacy and respect without her having to ask for it. She was drawn to him in a way she'd never been drawn to anyone, and that both thrilled and terrified her. Back at the ranch, they unloaded the supplies, and Amelia spent the afternoon planting the new seeds in the garden. Dalton worked nearby, repairing a section of fence, and they fell into an easy rhythm of working in companionable silence. That evening, Amelia made a proper dinner, a stew with fresh vegetables and herbs, and watched with quiet satisfaction as both Dalton and Charlie cleaned their plates. You're spoiling us, Charlie said. My Martha's a good cook, but even she doesn't do this well with what we've got on hand. Wait until the garden comes in, Amelia said. Then I'll really show you what I can do. The days fell into a pattern. Amelia rose early, made breakfast, tended the garden, and managed the household. She mended clothes, cleaned, and cooked meals that gradually put more meat on both men's bones. In her spare time, she worked with Juniper, learning the horse's personality and building trust between them. Dalton was often out working, but when he was near the house, they'd talk. He told her about his plans for the ranch, his hopes to build up a reputation for quality horses that would carry the Crawford name throughout Nevada. She told him about her mother, about the books she'd loved to read, about her dream of someday having a home that was truly hers. You've got a home here, Dalton said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains red and gold. Long as you want it. For now, Amelia said softly, but eventually you'll want to marry and your wife won't want another woman living in her house. Dalton was quiet for a long moment. I suppose that's true, he finally said, though I've got no plans to marry any time soon. Haven't found a woman who could tolerate this life. He gestured at the harsh landscape around them. It's beautiful, but it's hard. Not many women want to live this way. I don't mind it, Amelia said. I like the quiet, the space. In town, there were always people around, always noise. Here I can hear myself think. You're not like most women I've met, Dalton observed, and there was something in his tone that made her pulse quicken. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? She asked. A good thing, he said, his eyes meeting hers. A very good thing. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Amelia couldn't quite name, and then Dalton stood abruptly. I should check on the horses before bed. Sleep well, Amelia. Good night, Dalton, she said, and watched him walk away with long strides, his silhouette dark against the fading light. 3 weeks passed, then 4. The garden began to flourish under Amelia's care, and the ranch house became a home in ways it hadn't been before. Charlie's wife, Martha, came to visit one Sunday and immediately took to Amelia, insisting she come to town for the church social the following week. You need to meet some other women, Martha said. She was a plump, cheerful woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner that Amelia appreciated. "Working out here with just these men, you'll go crazy if you don't have some female
This
companionship."
story was posted on the
So
channel The
Amelia
Rusty
found
Saddle.
herself at the
Please do
church
not
social,
repost it in any
wearing the
form.
green muslin dress that Dalton had bought, her hair pinned up in a style Martha had helped her with. She met other women, mostly wives of miners and ranchers, and they welcomed her with varying degrees of warmth. Some were kind, others clearly curious about the scandal of her arrival at the Crawford Ranch. Dalton had driven her into town but had disappeared somewhere, leaving her in Martha's capable hands. She was chatting with a young woman named Sarah, who was newly married to a miner, when she heard raised voices from outside. "I tell you it ain't right," a man was saying loudly. "Crawford keeps that girl out there like she's his property, and everyone just accepts it." Amelia's stomach clenched. She recognized the voice as Pike's. "Maybe you should mind your own business," came Dalton's voice, hard and cold in a way Amelia had never heard it. "It is my business when decent folks are scandalized. That girl's living in sin, and you know it. Miss Walsh is my employee, nothing more. She has her own room, her own horse, and can leave any time she wants. There's nothing sinful about that. You expect people to believe you got a woman that pretty living in your house, and you haven't laid a hand on her. You must think we're all fools." The sound of a fist hitting flesh made Amelia gasp. She rushed outside with several other women to find Pike on the ground, his nose bleeding, and Dalton standing over him with fury in his eyes. "You can insult me all you want," Dalton said, his voice deadly quiet. "But you speak one more word against Miss Walsh's honor, and I'll do more than break your nose. She's a decent woman who's been through hell, and she doesn't deserve your filthy insinuations." Marshal Hendricks appeared, likely drawn by the commotion. "What's going on here?" "Pike was speaking out of turn," Dalton said, stepping back. "I corrected him." The marshal looked at Pike, who was struggling to his feet, then at Dalton. "That true, Pike? He hit me," Pike sputtered. "You going to arrest him for defending a lady's honor? Not likely." The marshal turned to Dalton. "But I'd appreciate it if you'd handle these matters with words instead of fists in the future." "I'll do my best," Dalton said. He turned and saw Amelia standing in the doorway of the church, her face pale. Something in his expression softened. "I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't apologize," Amelia said. She walked down the steps and stood beside him, ignoring the stares of the gathered crowd. "Thank you for defending me." "Always," Dalton said simply. They left the social shortly after, the mood ruined. The ride back to the ranch was silent until they were halfway home. "I'm sorry I brought trouble to you," Amelia said quietly. "Pike's right that people are talking." "I don't care what people say," Dalton said. "I know the truth, and so do you. That's all that matters. But your reputation—" "My reputation is built on the quality of my horses and the strength of my word, not on gossip from small-minded fools." He glanced at her. "Unless you're unhappy here, if you want to leave, I meant what I said. You're free to go any time." "I don't want to leave," Amelia said, and realized as she spoke the words how desperately true they were. "I like it here. I like the work, the ranch, the life." She hesitated, then added softly, "I like you." Dalton's hands tightened on the reins. "Amelia." "I know it's improper for me to say it," she rushed on. "I know I'm just your employee and you've been nothing but kind and respectful. But I needed you to know. I've never met anyone like you, Dalton. You gave me my life back when you could have taken it. You treat me with respect when the world told you I was worthless. How could I not care for you?" They'd reached the ranch, and Dalton pulled the wagon to a stop. He sat there for a moment, staring straight ahead, and Amelia's heart sank. She'd gone too far, said too much. Then he turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "I've been trying not to feel this way about you," he said, his voice rough. "Trying to keep my distance, treat you like just another hired hand. But God help me, Amelia, I can't. Every morning I wake up and look forward to seeing you at breakfast. Every evening I find excuses to stay near the house just so I can talk to you. When Pike said those things about you, I wanted to do more than break his nose. I wanted to make him take back every vile thought he'd ever had about you." "Dalton," Amelia breathed. "You've been here almost 2 months," he continued. "2 months, and you've turned this place into a home. You've made me remember what it's like to have someone to come back to, someone to share the day with. I'm falling for you, Amelia Walsh, and I don't know what to do about it." "You could kiss me," Amelia suggested, her heart racing. "That would be a start." He reached for her then, cupping her face in his calloused hands with a gentleness that made her want to weep. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once we do this, everything changes." "I want everything to change," she whispered. He kissed her, and it was nothing like she'd imagined a kiss would be. It was better. His lips were warm and firm against hers, and when she leaned into him, his arms came around her, strong and secure. She felt safe and wanted and cherished all at once, and when they finally pulled apart, she was breathless. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," Dalton admitted, resting his forehead against hers. "Then why didn't you?" "Because I wanted you to have time to know your own mind, time to not feel beholden to me because I'd helped you. I needed to know that if you wanted me, it was really me you wanted, not just security or gratitude." "You fool," Amelia said affectionately. "Did you really think I could confuse gratitude with this?" She kissed him again to prove her point. "I know exactly what I want, and it's you, Dalton Crawford. It's always been you." They sat in the wagon under the stars for a long time, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses and making plans. When they finally went inside, everything had indeed changed. They were no longer employer and employee, rancher and hired help. They were a man and a woman who'd found each other against all odds, and who were building something real together. The next few weeks were the happiest of Amelia's life. She and Dalton courted properly, despite living under the same roof. He was respectful of her space and her virtue, but he was also openly affectionate in ways that made her heart sing. He'd steal a kiss in the barn when Charlie wasn't looking, or hold her hand as they walked in the evening, or simply look at her across the dinner table with such warmth in his eyes that she felt beautiful beyond measure. They talked about the future, carefully at first, then with growing certainty. Dalton wanted to marry her, he made that clear, but he also wanted to make sure she understood what that would mean. "Life out here is hard," he said one evening as they sat on the porch. "Summers are brutal, winters can be harsh, we're isolated and we work sun up to sundown most days. If you marry me, that's the life you're choosing." "I know," Amelia said, "and I choose it. I choose you. This is the first place I've ever felt like I belong, Dalton, the first place that's felt like home." "Then marry me," he said, taking her hand. "Not because you owe me anything or because you need security, but because you want to build a life with me." "Yes," Amelia said, her eyes shining. "Yes, I'll marry you." They married 4 months after she'd arrived at the ranch in a simple ceremony at the church in Piotch. Martha stood up with Amelia, and Charlie was Dalton's best man. Most of the town turned out, some out of genuine goodwill, others out of curiosity. Even Marshall Hendricks attended, looking pleased. Pike was conspicuously absent, having left Piotch shortly after the incident at the church social. Rumor said he'd headed to California, and no one seemed sorry to see him go. Amelia wore the green muslin dress, and Dalton wore his best suit. When he slipped the simple gold band onto her finger and kissed her in front of the assembled witnesses, Amelia felt tears of joy slide down her cheeks. "I love you," Dalton whispered against her lips. I love you too, she whispered back. The wedding celebration at the ranch was small but heartfelt. Martha
This
had
story
cooked up
was
a
posted on
feast,
the
and
channel
several
The Rusty
neighbors brought
Saddle.
food and
Please do
well
not
wishes.
repost it in any form.
As the sun set and the guests departed, Dalton and Amelia finally had their home to themselves as husband and wife. He carried her over the threshold, a tradition that made her laugh with delight, and set her down gently in the main room. The house was quiet now, the remnants of the celebration cleared away, and they stood looking at each other with a mixture of joy and nervous anticipation. I want you to be happy, Dalton said, taking her hands. I want to make you happy every day of your life. You already do, Amelia assured him. She reached up and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. You gave me everything when you gave me a choice. Everything after that has been a gift I never expected. He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Amelia melted into him. When he swept her into his arms and carried her to his bedroom, to what was now their bedroom, she went willingly, eagerly, ready to fully become his wife in every sense of the word. Their wedding night was tender and passionate by turns. Dalton was gentle with her, mindful of her innocence, and Amelia was grateful for his patience. They explored each other slowly, learning what brought pleasure, what made the other sigh or gasp or murmur words of love. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of rightness that transcended the physical. They were truly one now, bound not just by law but by love. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, and Dalton held her close, pressing kisses to her hair. I can't believe you're really my wife, he said. I can't believe you're my husband, Amelia replied. Sometimes I still think I'll wake up in that wagon and this will all have been a dream. It's real, Dalton promised. I'm real, we're real. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that. Life, as Mrs. Crawford, was everything Amelia had hoped and more. She threw herself into making the ranch thrive, working alongside Dalton to build something they could both be proud of. The garden flourished and provided fresh vegetables through the summer. She learned to help with the horses, discovering she had a natural talent for gentling the young ones. And she turned the ranch house into a true home, with curtains on the windows and rugs on the floors and the smell of fresh bread always in the air. Charlie and Martha became like family, and gradually, other neighbors warmed to Amelia. The scandal of her arrival faded, replaced by respect for the work she did and the obvious love between her and Dalton. A year after their wedding, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. She told Dalton one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. His eyes went wide, then bright with joy. A baby, he said wonderingly. We're going to have a baby in about 7 months, Amelia confirmed, laughing as he swept her into his arms and spun her around. Careful, she protested. You'll make me dizzy. I'm already dizzy, Dalton said, setting her down but keeping his arms around her. A baby, our baby. God, Amelia, I'm so happy I can barely think straight. The pregnancy was not easy. The Nevada summer was brutal, and Amelia struggled with the heat and her changing body. But Dalton was attentive and supportive, taking on extra chores to ease her burden and making sure she rested when she needed to. Their son was born on a cold February night in 1876, with Martha serving as midwife. It was a long, difficult labor, and there were moments when Dalton, pacing in the main room, feared he might lose them both. But Amelia was strong, and just after midnight the thin wail of a newborn filled the house. Martha emerged with a bundle in her arms and a tired smile on her face. You've got a healthy boy, she announced, and your wife is asking for you. Dalton rushed into the bedroom to find Amelia pale and exhausted but glowing with joy. She held their son in her arms, and when Dalton sat on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face, he felt his eyes sting with tears. "He's perfect," he whispered. "He has your nose," Amelia said with a tired laugh. "Poor thing." "My nose is dignified," Dalton protested. He touched his son's tiny hand, marveling when the baby's fingers curled around his. "What should we name him?" They discussed names for months but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Amelia said, "What about Daniel?" "Daniel Crawford." "Daniel," Dalton repeated. "I like it." Daniel Joseph Crawford. Amelia made a face at the middle name, a nod to her stepfather she didn't particularly want, but Dalton shook his head. "Not Joseph after your stepfather. Joseph after my grandfather, my mother's father. He was a good man, kind and strong. I'd like our son to carry his name." "Then Daniel Joseph it is," Amelia agreed. Daniel was a good baby, healthy and growing fast. He had Dalton's dark hair and Amelia's brown eyes, and he was the light of both their lives. Dalton was a devoted father, often found with his son in his arms, talking to the baby about horses and cattle and the land as if Daniel could understand every word. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier than before but rich with joy. The ranch continued to prosper. Dalton's horses earned a reputation for quality, and buyers came from as far as California to purchase from the Crawford Ranch. Amelia managed the house and cared for Daniel, and in her spare moments, she'd ride Juniper out to check on Dalton, the baby secured in a sling against her chest. When Daniel was 2, Amelia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their daughter, Abigail Rose, was born in the spring of 1878, and she was a tiny, perfect replica of her mother. "Now we're truly a family," Dalton said, holding Abigail while Daniel, now a toddler, climbed onto the bed to peer at his new sister. "Baby," Daniel announced, poking Abigail's cheek gently. "That's right, that's your sister," Amelia said. "You have to help Mama and Papa take care of her." Daniel took his responsibility seriously, always wanting to help with Abigail, bringing her toys or alerting Amelia when the baby cried. Watching her children together, Amelia felt a contentment so profound, it sometimes brought tears to her eyes. The years passed in a blur of work and love and laughter. Daniel grew into a sturdy boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about horses and ranching. Abigail was quick and clever, always asking questions and getting into mischief. In 1881, they had another son whom they named Thomas, and 2 years later, a second daughter, Emily. The ranch house, once so quiet, now rang with the sounds of children playing and learning and growing. Dalton built an addition to give them more space, and the garden expanded to feed their growing family. Charlie and Martha became Uncle Charlie and Aunt Martha, and they doted on the Crawford children. Through it all, the love between Dalton and Amelia only deepened. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, sick animals and difficult births, but they faced everything together. At night, after the children were asleep, they'd sit on the porch as they had in those early days, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. "Do you ever think about that day?" Amelia asked one evening. They'd been married for 10 years, and she was 30 years old now, a mother of 4 and mistress of a thriving ranch. "The day I arrived here, all the time," Dalton admitted. He was 37 now, with lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting at the sun and a few threads of silver in his hair. "I think about how close I came to never knowing you. If I'd been a different man, if I'd accepted the debt the way your stepfather intended, we wouldn't be here now." "I would have run away," Amelia said. "Eventually, I would have taken Juniper and run, no matter the risk." "I'm glad you didn't have to," Dalton said, He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I'm glad I gave you a choice, and I'm so damn grateful you chose to stay." "Best decision I ever made," Amelia said. She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. "I love you, Dalton Crawford, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "I love you too, Amelia Crawford," he said. "You made me believe in second chances, in the possibility of finding something good in the midst of something bad. You made me believe in love." The years continued to roll by. The children grew, and the ranch grew with them. Daniel, at 18, was nearly as tall as his father and showed every sign of being a fine rancher himself. Abigail, at 16, was beautiful and intelligent, with her mother's compassion and her father's determination. Thomas, at 13,
This
was the
story was
family's
posted on the
joker,
channel The
always
Rusty
making
Saddle.
everyone
Please do
laugh.
not repost it in any form.
And Emily, at 11, was a dreamer who loved books and horses in equal measure. In 1889, when Amelia was 35 and Dalton was 42, they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary with a party that drew people from all over the county. The ranch was prosperous, the children were healthy, and their love was as strong as ever. Standing in their yard, surrounded by friends and family, with her husband's arm around her waist and her children laughing nearby, Amelia thought back to that terrified girl who'd arrived in a wagon, sent as payment for a debt. She thought about the man who'd given her a horse and asked her to stay, who'd seen her not as property but as a person deserving of respect and choice. "What are you thinking about?" Dalton asked, pulling her closer. "I'm thinking about how far we've come," Amelia said. "From where we started to where we are now, it's been a good life, Dalton, a really good life." "It's been the best life," Dalton corrected. "And it's not over yet. We've got years ahead of us, and I plan to spend every one of them loving you. Promise?" Amelia asked, smiling up at him. "Promise," he said, and kissed her as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. As the years went on, the Crawford Ranch became one of the most respected in Nevada. Daniel took over more of the daily operations, allowing Dalton and Amelia to step back slightly, though neither of them could ever truly retire. Working the land was in their blood now. Abigail married a young lawyer from Piotch, a good man named Samuel who treated her like a queen. They settled in town but visited the ranch often, and when they had their first child, a daughter, they named her Amelia Rose, after her grandmother. Thomas went to Denver to study veterinary medicine, returning with knowledge that helped improve the health and breeding of the ranch's horses. Emily, true to her dreamy nature, became a teacher, running the small schoolhouse that had been built in Piotch as the town grew more civilized. Dalton and Amelia became grandparents multiple times over, and their house was always full of children and grandchildren, noise and laughter and love. They grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands becoming gnarled with work and arthritis, but their love never fading. On a warm evening in 1900, when Amelia was 46 and Dalton was 53, they sat on their porch as they had countless times before. The ranch stretched out around them, prosperous and beautiful. Their children were grown and thriving. Their grandchildren were healthy and happy. They had built something lasting, something good. "I never thanked you properly," Amelia said suddenly. "For what?" Dalton asked, though he suspected he knew. "For everything. For seeing me as more than payment for a debt. For giving me Juniper and asking me to stay. For loving me when I had nothing to offer you but myself. For building this life with me." "Amelia," Dalton said gently, taking her hand. "You had everything to offer. You brought light and warmth and love into my life. You gave me a family, a home, a reason to build something lasting. If anyone should be thanking anyone, it's me thanking you." "Then we'll call it even," Amelia said with a smile. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, the same stars that had shone down on them that first night when everything had changed. The night air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of sage and horses, the familiar perfume of home. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Amelia asked. "You said the mare was mine, that I had choices." "I remember," Dalton said. "You gave me more than a choice," Amelia said. "You gave me a life, a real life with purpose and meaning and love. You gave me everything I never knew I needed." "We gave each other everything," Dalton said. "That's what love is, Amelia. It's not one person giving and another taking. It's both people building something together, something neither could have built alone." "Then we built something beautiful," Amelia said, squeezing his hand. "We did," Dalton agreed. "And we're not done yet." In 1905, the Crawford Ranch celebrated its 40th anniversary under Dalton's ownership, and Daniel organized a massive celebration. People came from all over Nevada to honor the Crawford family and the legacy they'd built. There were speeches and toasts, but the moment that made Amelia cry was when Daniel stood up with his siblings and thanked their parents. "My mother came to this ranch with nothing," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "She'd been treated like property, like something that could be traded for a debt. My father saw her as she truly was, a woman of strength and dignity who deserved respect and choice. He gave her both, and she gave him her heart in return. Together they built this ranch, this family, this legacy. Everything we have, everything we are, we owe to their love and their example." Dalton and Amelia stood together, their children and grandchildren around them, and accepted the applause and well wishes of the crowd. But later, when everyone had gone and they were alone again in their room, Amelia turned to Dalton with tears in her eyes. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" she asked. "That day when I arrived, did you ever think we'd be here, surrounded by family with a legacy that will outlast us?" "No," Dalton admitted. "That day I was just trying to do the right thing. I saw a woman who needed help and I helped her. I didn't expect to fall in love. I didn't expect you to stay. I certainly didn't expect all of this." He gestured broadly, encompassing not just the room but the ranch, their family, their entire life. "But I'm so grateful for it, for all of it." "For you." "I'm grateful too," Amelia said. She moved into his arms and he held her close as he had on countless nights before. "For you, for our children, for this life we built together. I wouldn't change a single moment. Not even the hard parts," Dalton asked. "The droughts, the sick cattle, the times we thought we might lose everything. Not even those," Amelia said. "Because we faced them together and they made us stronger. They made us who we are." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, their bodies knowing each other as well as their hearts did. And afterward, lying in each other's arms, they talked about the future, about the grandchildren who would inherit the ranch, about the great-grandchildren they hoped to see. "I want us to grow old together," Amelia said. "Really old. I want to sit on that porch when we're 80 and look back on 60 years of marriage. Then that's what we'll do," Dalton promised. "I'll love you until my last breath, Amelia Crawford, and beyond if I can manage it." The years proved true to that promise. They did grow old together, their love a constant through the changing seasons of life. When Dalton was 60 and beginning to slow down, it was Amelia who encouraged him to rest, to let Daniel handle more of the work. When Amelia was 55 and sick with pneumonia, it was Dalton who sat by her bedside day and night until she recovered, refusing to leave her side. They celebrated their 25th anniversary, then their 30th, then their 35th. They became great-grandparents, then great-great-grandparents as their family tree branched and grew. The Crawford Ranch remained a pillar of the community, and Dalton and Amelia were treated with respect and affection by everyone who knew them. In 1910, when Dalton was 63 and Amelia was 56, they took a trip back to the spot where the wagon had first stopped all those years ago. The landscape had changed some, civilized by time and progress, but the bones of it were the same. The mountains still
This
rose in the
story was
distance,
posted on the
stark
channel
and
The Rusty
beautiful.
Saddle.
The
Please
sun
do not
still beat
repost it
down
in any
with
form.
relentless intensity. The sage still scented the air. "Right there," Amelia said, pointing to a spot near the barn. "That's where the wagon stopped. That's where you walked out and changed my life." "That's where you changed mine," Dalton countered. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and they stood together, looking at the past through the lens of the present. "Best $300 debt I ever settled." Amelia laughed and turned in his arms. "I'd say I was worth at least $350. "You're priceless," Dalton said seriously. Then, now, and always. They went inside where the house was full of the sounds of family. Daniel and his wife were there with their children. Abigail had brought her family down from Piach. Thomas was home from a trip to inspect some horses in California. Emily had arrived with her husband and their 2 youngest children. The house rang with laughter and conversation, and the chaos of multiple generations under one roof. Dalton and Amelia moved through it all, greeting grandchildren and great-grandchildren, sharing stories and wisdom, but always gravitating back to each other. They were the center around which the family orbited, the foundation upon which everything else was built. That night, after everyone had settled down and the house had finally quieted, Dalton and Amelia walked out to the porch one last time. The stars were brilliant overhead, countless pinpricks of light in the velvet darkness. "Dalton," Amelia said softly, "if you could go back to that day, knowing everything that would come after, would you do it all again?" "In a heartbeat," Dalton said without hesitation. "Every joy, every sorrow, every challenge and triumph. I'd do it all again exactly the same, because it led me to you and to this life we've built together." "So would I," Amelia said. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "They sent me as payment for a horse, and you gave me the horse and asked me to stay. You gave me a choice when no one else would, and I chose you, Dalton Crawford. I chose you then and I choose you now and I'd choose you again in every lifetime." "I love you, Amelia," Dalton said, his voice thick with emotion. "More than I have words to express." "I love you too," Amelia replied. "To the stars and back. Forever." They stood there for a long time, 2 people who had found each other in the harshest of circumstances and built something beautiful from it. They had taken a moment of potential tragedy and transformed it into a love story that would echo through generations. Behind them, the house was full of their legacy, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who existed because of a choice made on a dusty afternoon in 1874. A choice to see a person rather than property. A choice to offer freedom rather than take it. A choice to build rather than destroy. And as Dalton and Amelia Crawford stood together under the Nevada stars, their hands clasped and their hearts intertwined, they knew that they had lived a life worth living. They had loved deeply and truly, and that love had created ripples that would continue long after they were gone. Years later, when both had passed peacefully in their sleep within days of each other, having reached their 70s together, their family gathered to remember them. They told the story of how Dalton and Amelia had met, about the wagon and the horse and the choice that had changed everything. They spoke of the love that had built the Crawford Ranch and the Crawford legacy. And on the porch of the ranch house, where Dalton and Amelia had spent so many evenings together, their great-granddaughter found an old journal. It was Amelia's, filled with her thoughts and memories from throughout her life. On the last page, written in her careful hand, were these words: "I came to this place as a woman with nothing, worth nothing, believing I had nothing to offer the world. Dalton showed me I was wrong. He gave me dignity, respect, and choice. He gave me love. And together, we built a life that exceeded my wildest dreams." To anyone who reads this in the years to come, know this: love is the most powerful force in the world. It can transform tragedy into triumph, despair into hope, and strangers into family. Choose love always. As Dalton and I chose each other, that dusty afternoon so long ago when he gave me a horse and asked me to stay, I stayed, and it was the best decision of my life. The great-granddaughter closed the journal with tears in her eyes and looked out at the land that Dalton and Amelia had loved. The Crawford Ranch would continue, passed down through the generations, but it would always carry the mark of its true founders, not just in the quality of the horses or the prosperity of the operation, but in the values that underpinned everything: respect, dignity, choice, and above all, love. And somewhere in whatever comes after, Dalton and Amelia Crawford were together still, their love eternal, their story complete. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that would endure. The end.